Okay, so there were a lot of people who took the React.js course and they were having some trouble trying to understand some of the concepts when it came to understanding like the React components, the way the state management works and things like that. So I wanted to take a step back and be able to explain a lot more fundamental JavaScript concepts. So how do data types work, how do functions work, things like that. And that'll give you kind of the foundation of the coursework for what you're actually going to need when it comes to doing things inside of React. So right now for this one, we're going to be focusing on data types inside of JavaScript. And so what are data types? So a data type is the way that JavaScript is going to represent the kind of data that you actually are working with, right? So there's a couple of different things that you can think of. Let's imagine an application like Instagram, for example. So you're going to have a username. So in your username, you have a collection of letters or symbols or even numbers that are going to be inside of your username, but typically it's some kind of just text representation. That's what a string is inside of JavaScript. So let's say const username equals, let's say my username, right? 1, 2, 3, right? It's just kind of an example username. So you'll notice, one of the things that you'll notice here is that we have the string or variable username in between these double quotes. And so in JavaScript, that's the way that you'll declare to your variable so that JavaScript understands, hey, whatever you put in between these two double quotes, we want to treat it like a string. So every individual part of this string, right? The numbers, 3, 2, 1, right? Each of these letters that we have here. In programming languages, those are typically referred to as chars or characters, but we just say chars for short. And each of those, you can think of it as, right, like letters are to words, what chars are to strings. So each individual component, one single char, when you add a bunch of chars together, you get a string. And there's multiple different kinds of data that you can actually put inside of a string. String is just the text representation of whatever it is that you put inside of it. So you can put numbers inside of strings. You can put symbols inside of strings. You can put letters, right, and words. Obviously, you can put, spaces and symbols and all of these things. But a typical use case for this, right, for our Instagram example would be the representation of whatever your username would be these strings. And so there's a couple of different ways you can actually declare a string inside of JavaScript. So I just showed you if you use these double quotes, whatever you store inside of here, this is what's going to be considered a string. We can also use single quotes, username, single quotes, and then we'll say equals, single quote, my alternate username. And we can use const backtick username is equal to, and let's use the backticks username. Cool. So in this, on line 3, in our second example, we're using the single quotes in order to be able to declare our program that we're creating a string and that we're storing it inside of this variable called username single quotes. We have another one here that's called backtick username, and for that we're using these backticks inside of JavaScript, and you'll see in a second why there's these different ways to be able to declare strings. One of the cool functions of using the backticks one is you can use something that's called a string interpolation, and string interpolation inside of JavaScript, it's a way of being able to execute JavaScript code inside of your string so that if you want to be able to create a value on the fly, or if you want to be able to add the value of one of the variables that you have in your program inside of a string, you can do that. So to give you an example, let's say we wanted to combine, right, username 1 and then with this backticks username that we have. We could do that with, sorry, I think the program's freezing up, with string interpolation by saying const combined username is equal to, let's use the backticks, and then we could say backtick username space, and let's say username, right? So using this syntax, inside of the backticks, you have the dollar symbol, and then you have the opening curly bracket and the closing curly bracket, and then whatever you place inside of that opening bracket and that curly bracket is going to be treated like JavaScript code. So in this string, it's saying take our first string that we have right here, the backtick username, put a space, which is what we have right here, and then do that symbol again, and then add to this string this variable that we have called username. So if we wanted to see what this looks like, console.log, and then we could say combined username. And let's go ahead and execute this. And then you'll see we got backtick username, my username 123, right? Pretty straightforward. Another way to be able to combine strings is you don't have to use this right here, which is, I think it's freezing up again. Okay, it looked like WebStorm was having some issues, so I went ahead and switched IDEs to VS Code. But okay, so for this example, so for our combined string or our combined username that we have, so this is using what's called string interpolation. In order to do this, and that's what the syntax is, where you have the backticks and you've got the the dollar symbol, open bracket, curly closing bracket. You can also const, let's say string combination. You can combine strings. If we wanted to achieve a similar result, let's use username single quotes. You could just say plus and then backtick username. So if you do a string plus a string, JavaScript will put the two together and then produce a new string. So let's go ahead and run this. Oh, we need to console log it. Console.log, and let's say string combination. And you'll see both of these have been combined. Now, you'll notice that there's no space in between these two strings, so we can add more, create a string right here, and with this is going to create a space between the two of them. Let's run it again, and now there's the space. So strings also have these built-in functions to them called methods. And so methods there's tons of JavaScript data types that have built-in functions or built-in methods, which are just kind of predefined code that the developers who created the engine that you might be running, right? Whether it's JavaScript, Node.js for JavaScript, or whatever particular version you're compiling to. But they will have these predefined functions that you're able to access to do really, really cool things with your strings. So the first one that I'll be showing you is, so we mentioned a little bit earlier how a char is just a single, right, unit inside of a string, right? Like this, we got this F, we got the number 3, we've got the ampersand symbol, right? All of these are chars. Now, to show you the first one, if we wanted to do, let's say, const, let's do console.log, and let's do username dot, and you'll see this list of all of these different methods that pop up, right? These are built-in functions that you're able to run on your strings. And so the first one we'll take a look at is at. So the at method allows you to pass the position inside of your string and to return a single char from that string. So if we say at 0, and inside of JavaScript, when it comes to indexes, so index is just the position inside of your string. So if you were to consider each of these letters or numbers inside of username as a char, indexes inside of JavaScript start at 0. So if we did an index of 0, we would get the first char, which in this case would be the letter M in our string that we have stored inside of username. So let's run this and see what we get. Boom, you'll see that outputs the M. Now you can pass into this at method, you can pass in both positive and negative numbers. So if you were to pass in a negative number, it'll start counting from the end of the string going backwards. If you pass in a positive number, it's going to start counting at the beginning of the string going forward. So let's say we did like -1 and pass it in. It would start back here, right, and it's going to count, okay, right here. Go back once from the beginning, you should get 3. There you go. So that's how the at method works. Okay, so here's another example of a method that's built into strings inside of JavaScript. So right here, we have our string, the cat, and then we just added at the end of it the string. We put this dot, concat, opening parentheses, closing parentheses. And then inside, here's where we're going to pass in our function parameters. So right here, we have a string, and you'll notice we're using the single quotes. It doesn't matter, we could use the double quotes, but I just decided to. And here, we just have an empty space inside of these single quotes. And then we have a comma, right? So we're showing, hey, inside of concat, we're going to pass in multiple parameters. So this first one right here is just an empty string, comma, and then let's pass in a new string in the hat, period. And then we're closing up that string. And so what concat does is you can pass in multiple strings. Like if we wanted to, we could, keep this going and add even more, as many as we want to. But what this does is it allows you to create a new string by combining your original string with whatever new strings you pass in. So let's go ahead and run this. And you'll see right here, we get the cat in the hat. Yeah, because you'll see if we run this, we go ahead and get the cat in the hat, which is our new string. It's just been combined with what we passed in with concat. Okay, so let's look at another built-in method. Let's say that we have a string, so we'll say name. And for this name, let's have John Doe. Okay, so for John Doe, let's say we wanted to be able to get his first name and then put that inside of a variable, but we only wanted his first name, right? So how do I get this string inside of a string? So there's another method you can use called, say name dot substring, and it was, oh, this is a reserved keyword, so let's change the name of this. My name, oops, and then const first name. Let me change that one. Let's say my name. Okay, cool. So in this example, we have our variable, our initial variable, my name, John Doe, and then we're going to create a second variable, first name, and then we're calling this method substring on the my name variable. So again, remember with indexes, you're able to get the position inside of the string. And so the first thing that we pass into the function is going to be where we want to start, so the starting position. And then the second thing that we pass into substring is going to be where we want that ending position. And that's going to get a string from within the string. So if we start at 0, right, with John, let's go to 0. And then if we count from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 3, let's console log, see what we generate. Oops, sorry, this one, 0. Okay, so in this example, right, we have our variable, my name, John Doe, and then we have our second variable, first name. And so what we're doing is we're taking my name and we're calling another method on the string called substring, which is where we're able to get a portion of this original string. And the way that we tell it what we want it to grab is, if you'll remember indexes, so these two arguments that we're passing into the function, the very first one right here is the starting position. So we're saying start at the very beginning of the string. And then with this, we're saying here's the ending position. So if we just count from 0, and then we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So from 0, again, 0 being the very beginning of the string, starting from 0, and if we go. Okay, so in this example, we're using substring. So we've created this variable called my name, and we're setting it equal to this string, John Doe. So let's say that we wanted to be able to get his first name, right? So instead of having John Doe, we just want his first name that he has. So we're going to call this original variable that stores the name, and we're going to say dot substring. So dot substring is a way for you to get a portion of a string, and then it will return that portion here. So you're going to pass in two different parameters into our function substring, and these two parameters are going to be the starting position inside of the string. So because the string starts at, in indexes in JavaScript, they start with 0. So we're saying start at the beginning of the string, 0. And then we're going to go 4 spaces, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, counting John. And let's go ahead and console log this to see what we get. Boom. Now, if we wanted to be able to do this for his last name, we could do the same thing. If we go const last name is equal to my name dot substring. Now this time, we need to start at do, so let's go 0, 1, 4, say 5, and then we'll go 6, 7. Let's clear this out. Oops, and we need to console log for last name instead of first name. Just 1, there we go, 8. Boom, now we have his last name, right? And they're stored inside of 2 separate variables. Show you them both. John Doe, right? 2 separate lines. And so, again, just with substring, this is a way that if you know the position, right, and the positions of the characters or the substring that you're trying to be able to get, you can use this dot substring method in order to be able to do that. Yeah, another one of the built-in methods that we have inside of JavaScript is you can mess with the casing of strings. So let's say we say all case is equal to this lowercase sentence. Well, we could say const uppercase. So we already have a variable right here where we're storing a sentence in all lowercase. Now, in order to create this new variable called const uppercase, we're going to call our original all lowercase, and let's just say dot uppercase, parentheses to call it. Let's remove these console logs. And now let's go console.log uppercase. Clear this out. And now let's run it. Okay, so in this example, we've created this variable, right, all lowercase, and then we're going to create a new variable where we want this same original sentence that's using lowercase letters, and let's say we want to transfer it to an uppercase sentence. So the way that we would do that is we call this method, it's dot to uppercase, and then the parentheses. And then if we go ahead, so we have our original variable right here, and we've created this sentence that's all lowercase letters. On the next line, we're creating a new variable called uppercase, and we're saying, hey, take our original variable that we have with the all lowercase sentence, and then call this method dot to uppercase, which is going to take all the letters there and then make them all uppercase. So now if we console log this and run it, you'll notice that all of the letters have become uppercase now from lowercase. So again, this is just a bunch of really convenient built-in methods that we have inside of JavaScript to be able to work with and to manipulate strings. Okay, string placement. I'll show you one more. Another really cool one that you can use inside of JavaScript, I've actually used this one pretty often, is one called replace. So let's say const name, and let's say John Doe. So right here we have declaring our variable my name too, and then right equal to John Doe. Now const replaced name. So let's say we wanted to change his name from, we don't want it to be Doe anymore, right? Let's say we want it to be Smith. So let's go ahead and insert our variable. It's holding our string called dot replace, and then you're going to give it 2 different things. So the first parameter that you have to pass into this function is going to be the text that you want to search for, Doe, or comma for our next parameter, and then the second one is going to be the string value that you want to replace it with, Smith. So then let's console log this, replace name, node replaced, oops, got the file, there we go, run it. Now we have John Smith instead of John Doe. So again, familiarize with these things. You can check the description that I will leave that will have a link to the MDN docs for the actual string methods that you could use, but there's a ton of them. But play around with these, use them, and yeah, see how you're able to create some cool things.